Yo, this is the ancient Texan. Um, I just created a section called The Demise of Metals. This is more or less introduction to that section. Um, Most of you probably have never noticed how much metals affects the quality of your life. Like you can't have a car without it, a phone, a TV, um, build a building, build a bridge, um, build a railroad, build the rails, fix the bumper on your car. There's a whole spectrum of metals that are used behind the scene. Copper brings you your electricity. Sometimes there's aluminum cabling. Um, there's structural metals like iron and steel and um, aluminum, even magnesium. Lightweight metals like magnesium, aluminum, but they're all around you. If you see behind me, I have metal bookshelves, and then there's a metal frame, and then there's my window there's got metal. Um, then there's the fuse box over there that's all connected up with copper, and that lamp that you see to the right there is a metal lamp. Um, anyway, you get the point. And we'll do the role of metals in your life. That'll be part of the theme. But do you realize that some metals are getting really hard to find and get out of the ground? And the one that everyone's been talking about is copper. I actually don't think the plan that they have for uh, climate change, which involves um, renewables and then a grid to distribute that renewable power, and then you know batteries to store it and even out the load, um, electric cars and a grid to handle all of that charge. um, I don't actually think that is possible because I don't think we can get that much copper out of the ground fast enough. The grade of copper, like it's 1% copper in the ore or half a percent. Well, the percentage is dropping down like a half a percent, quarter percent. It used to be several percent when I started my career. And also, you got to go deeper in the ground, and you have to dig up sometimes the overburden or what's on top of the ore. So you can end up, you have to dig out 1,000 pounds of dirt to get 1 pound of copper. That wouldn't be crazy. It takes a lot of energy to do that, and it's getting harder. Now, I haven't done the math myself, but I've listened to people that are, reputable. It would take like 5 times as many copper mines as we've got on going on right now, maybe more than that, um, to get the copper out of the ground in time enough to make the grids, the electric cars, the solar panels, the windmills, in time to save us from climate change. Well, that would require more copper mines than we've ever made or ever been able to make. And I'll show some of future podcasts, like in the US, we make about 60% of the copper we need. And that's just to keep up with the way life is right now. With the old fashioned, here's a house with copper wire and we bring a cable out to you. And we can't do that in this country anymore. Now, if you put that across the world, I don't think Plan A for climate change is going to work just because of copper. And we're going to go into a lot of metals that are having supply shortages, um, and look at how realistic it is to expect us to keep expanding the production. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're at a stage of peak copper production, and I'll examine that in more detail in another podcast. But you've probably heard of peak oil production or peak oil demand. Um, I don't know about demand. That's a tricky animal because that's people wanting something, but it's also people wanting something that have money in their pocket to buy it, and that's tricky, especially the way wealth inequality is going. Um, but let's say peak production for whatever reason, because there's not demand or because um, they can't find more, you know, copper ores and can't dig fast enough and can't get the money to build them. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars to open up a copper mine. But let's say that what I'm saying is true, and you can come back and we can try to document this stuff with details. There's the bad side that, Plan A for climate change doesn't work. But there may be a good side too. If you can't get enough copper to distribute the electricity that you're making with your renewables and your gas powered plants and your nuclear plants, does that slow down the production of energy? If you can't distribute it, what good is it to have it? And if you can't distribute it, you can't use it, and our standard of living will be reduced, but also our copper footprint. Because one form or another, no matter how you make that energy, it has a carbon footprint. Now, the carbon footprint might be different on a solar panel than a plant that's fired on natural gas, but everything has a carbon footprint. That's just, and solar panels wear out, and you got to make silicon chips, Si chips, and you got to make copper wire to the solar farm or the wind farm. There's also a lot of copper in the wind farm, and you got to distribute it out to the copper cars or the electric cars using a lot of copper, etc. But what if you can't distribute that copper? Does that slow down the consumption of electricity and energy? So now multiply that by many metals that are getting difficult to get out of the ground, and also the social pushback against investments that dig holes in the ground, against mines. We've had that in the US a long time, but what if that kind of sentiment expands and you can't get the metals that allow a large copper footprint, that you have to live on less? That's one of the themes that we're going to look at. And I think it's very likely that the supply of metals is going to slow down human expansion and economic expansion and carbon footprint. Now that's kind of the question we're going to be looking at. But that's an introduction, and phase one of this discussion. Anyway, I hope you're having a good one. It's a Sunday here for me that I'm doing this, middle of February. I think it's the 15th. So this is the Ancient Texan. Hope you have a good one. Namaste.